Welcome to the fifth part of Sahara conflict history. The Polisario considers itself an independent so-called Democratic Sahrawi Arab Republic (RASD), while referring to the land liberated by Morocco in the Western Sahara as occupied territories. The so-called RISD is in flagrant contradiction to the proclaimed request by the Polisario for a referendum on self-determination. How can a referendum on the self-determination of all Sahrawis be called for in their name by an entity without the slightest moral, historical or democratic basis? This is reminiscent of the processes followed by totalitarian and anti-democratic movements. The old and very well-known phrase of answering in the name of the people beats the question of whether they were ever asked. The unilateral proclamation by the Polisario Front of the RASD is in flagrant violation to international law. This is tantamount to the failure to respect the will of the people and the rules of democracy, as well as the deliberate and premeditated attempt to procure political gain by using underhanded methods and cheating. This is the reason why the Polisario Front discredited the request for free self-determination of the Sahrawi people. It engaged in manipulation by replying in advance of letting the people themselves decide. Thus, it can never be said that it respects what the Sahrawis want when it acts in such a way. No one can say the Polisarios are honest while they respond in the place of others. One cannot claim to be oppressed and then cheat on his own principles. One cannot say that the right to self-determination of people is being crippled and then decide on their future without any consultation with a multitude of their representatives. One cannot say that one is honest if one has cheated in advance. The RSD has no territorial existence. It is set up in Tindouf, Algeria, and has no people, as the only population it can draw from are the sequestered people in the camps, held and controlled to their great dismay. Now, one of this is the result of an election. It does not hold the power of sovereignty, existing only on the internet and in fictitious institutions on the territory of a foreign country. The Polisario Front has set up fictitious institutions such as the Sahrawi government, the Red Crescent, the Union of Sahrawi Women, the Union of Sahrawi Youth in Tindouf. There's spare no effort in organizing on Algerian soil festivities commemorated under the names of 27 February, 10 May, 20 May, or the 12th of October. Upon its creation the Polisario appointed its first Secretary General, Shahid al-Wali, who took over in the place of Mohammed Abdelaziz, thereafter called President, Secretary General or Chief of the Polisario. The front also managed to create propaganda media in support of these separatist ideas, like the Sahrawi Press Agency, Radio Sahara, and Radio Polisario, dedicating its body and soul to becoming the absolute chimera of the Sahara. Indeed, after it lost the war and following the failure of the referendum project, which incidentally is impossible to hold as all the borders would have to be changed, the Polisario began to say to anyone willing to listen that the Sahara is a territory occupied by Morocco and that this region is subjected to all the forms of political repression and violation of human rights. The Polisario is absolutely in no position to preach to anyone else on human rights. Everyone knows that the borders in the northwest region of Africa, in particular with regard to the confines of Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, and Mali, were drawn with a ruler in conjunction with the sharing of these African territories between France and Spain. The current borders are based on no logical or valid geographical, human, or other criteria. It can be said without fault that they are borders drawn arbitrarily at the time of the splits up. This is the real reason behind the failure of the referendum project. Sahrawis are found not only in Morocco. The entire southwestern part of Algeria, from Bashar to the borders of Mauritania and Mali, is a region peopled by Sahrawi tribes. The entire northwestern part of the territory of Mauritania is also populated by Sahrawis, as is the far north of Mali between Timbuktu and the border with Algeria at Todeni. For this reason, to hold a free, democratic, fair, and honest referendum on self-determination, allowing all Sahrawis to express an opinion on their future as promoted by the United Nations in its plan for an initial settlement and responsible for changing the borders of the four relevant countries: Morocco, Mauritania, Algeria, and Mali, in such a way as the Sahrawi populations and their old and current historical geographical sphere could be determined. Such changes in borders are obviously impossible, illogical, and irresponsible. Therefore, a referendum on identification is also impossible to conduct. Any attempt at organizing one is a deliberate bid to lengthen the conflict and the unnecessary suffering of the populations. Along the same lines, the Polisario Front did not hesitate to create more completely fabricated institutions with the complicity of certain anti-Moroccan individuals for diverse reasons, such as associations for friendship with the Sahrawi people, human rights associations, associations for solidarity with the Sahrawi people, associations for solidarity with the RASD, humanitarian aid associations, the Shahid Al-Wali Association, the Ahmed Rega Association, the Association of Friends of the Western Sahara, or the Friends of the Sahrawi people. Although the United Nations has decided it is impossible to organize a referendum in the Sahara without a change in borders, the Polisario resorted to inventing the issue of self-determination, arguing that thereby, through the referendum, this could only lead to separatism. However, the United Nations Charter, the ultimate international jurisprudence, stipulates that self-determination must take account of the territorial integrity and unity. Thus, autonomy remains one of the best solutions for self-determination. Thank you for listening and watching the fifth part of Sahara conflict history. Goodbye. Welcome to the